Motivational interviewing. The motivational interviewing training provides a comprehensive insight on guiding principles, strategies, and skills for incorporating motivational interviewing techniques in client-centered work with particularly focus on creating opportunities for behavior change. After completing this training, you will be able to identify motivational interviewing basic steps, describe the primary differences between traditional patient education and a client-centered approach aimed at behavior change, identifying which clinical cases show positive responses from brief motivational interviewing in oral health, and describe principles and strategies for motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a technique in which therapists become a helper in the change process and express acceptance of the client, and can be used in multitudes of environments. The therapist's goal in motivational interviewing is to collaborate in a process that edifies the client and makes him or her responsible for personal choices. It elicits and explores the person's own argument for change.
You can also identify readiness for change.
Therapists should be aware that ambivalence is normal. The therapist accepts and facilitates the change. And skillful reflective listening is fundamental to expressing empathy.
Motivation can grow as people talk about values, importance, and confidence.
There are several stages of change in motivational interviewing. These include pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and termination. The pre-contemplation stage occurs before the client is even aware that a change needs to happen. Family members, friends, and significant others may easily recognize that a client has a problem or a change that needs to happen, but the client is often unaware. The maintenance stage is the ongoing phase that may be lifelong for some people. This stage occurs after the person has done the work of making changes and then needs to continue making efforts to maintain the results. The termination phase is one which the initial issue is no longer a problem. Some people never reach this phase while working for change, as the principles they developed in the work they completed must continue to be maintained and reinforced for their entire lives. There are 4 basic principles to motivational interviewing. These are express empathy, develop discrepancy, roll with resistance, and support self-efficiency. When a therapist demonstrates empathy, it reflects an accurate understanding of what the client might be experiencing, assumes the client's perspectives are understandable, comprehensible, and valid, and seeks to understand the client's feelings and perspectives without judging. There are several ways that a therapist can demonstrate empathy. These include, but are not limited to, maintaining good eye contact, body orientation, reflective listening, asking clarifying questions, and avoiding expressing doubt or passing judgment. Developing discrepancy. It compares current behaviors to future goals. So for example, you may say, sometimes when you drink during the week, you can't get out of bed to get to work. Last month you missed 5 days, but you enjoy your work and doing well in your job is very important to you. You have to be able to roll with resistance. Your client may say, I don't plan to quit drinking anytime soon. You may think, you don't think that abstinence would work for you right now. Another client may say, my husband is always nagging me about my drinking. He's calling me an alcoholic and it really gets on my nerves. To roll with the resistance, you may say, it sounds like he really cares about you and is concerned, although he expresses it in a way that makes you angry. Supporting sufficiency. A therapist should know who is responsible for carrying out actions to change. Rephrasing resistance is one way to do that. But remember, it is the client who is responsible for choosing and carrying out actions to change, not the therapist. There's a 4-step interviewing process. The 4 steps in motivational interviewing are engaging. The engagement process can occur through having sensitive conversations with your client. This can be done through ice-breaking strategies and building rapport. Focusing. You should focus on what's important to your client regarding their behavior, health, and welfare. The therapist should focus on understanding what the client is saying and how they're feeling. Evoking. Call forth the client's personal motivation for changes and concerns. Therapists should begin talking with a client to talk about underlying concerns that may increase or decrease their motivation for change. Planning. Begin the talk about a plan for change. Raise the subject about change, support self-efficiency, and address elements for change. The motivational interviewing core skills include eliciting positive change, utilizing open questions, using reflective strategies, listening, building motivation, and summarizing. According to Miller and Walnick, when a therapist argues that a client behavior needs to change, the client often responds by arguing against change. Motivational interviewing is client-centered, goal-oriented. It's an approach for facilitating a method for enhancing intrinsic motivation to change by exploring, resolving ambivalence, and encouraging self-efficiency. By asking open-ended questions, the stage is set to use aspects of reflective listening, affirmations, and summarizing. Open-ended questions encourage the client to do most of the talking, avoiding us making premature judges and keeping communication moving forward. Open-ended questions usually go from general to more specific. For example, how, what, tell me about. Open-ended questions allow the opportunity for the client to explore ambivalence. An affirmation is a compliment or statement of appreciation and understanding. Affirmations express appreciation and understanding of both difficulties and strengths in coping with problems. For example, I appreciated your efforts with completing the assignment from last week.
Reflective listening is a process of hearing what the speaker is saying, making a guess at what they mean, verbalizing this guess in the form of a statement. This is to help check out and convey your understanding of what your client is trying to communicate.
Reflective listening is essential to expressing empathy. Therapists should reflect back what was said to make sure that they have an understanding of what was heard. This can help in building trust in the relationship. Reflective listening encourages further exploration of problems and feelings. It can be used strategically for change and helps demonstrate to the client that you have heard and understand them. Examples of reflective listening includes, but is not limited to, simple reflection, staying close, repeating and rephrasing. Complete reflection, making a guess, so paraphrasing major restatements, inferring a meaning.
Forming reflective questions. Take a look at some of these starters.
However, there are lots of communication roadblocks. Examples of non-reflective listening include directing, commanding, ordering, threatening, preaching, disagreeing, judging, blaming, criticizing. These are the responses that the client may conclude if we just don't get it. These responses are common when a client feels as though we aren't listening with the intent of understanding their feelings. It does not encourage self-efficiency. Summaries in motivational interviewing are double-sided reflections. These are statements that look at both sides of an issue and can be effective in analyzing a person's ambivalence. Self-efficiency is defined as believing in oneself. Motivational interviewing should be collaborative, evocative, respectful of autonomy, and compassionate. Self-management is when a client is learning to manage their own care. Collaboration is not about confrontation. Motivational interviewing should be developed in a partnership in which the client's expertise, perspectives, and input are central to the consultation. Foster an encouraging power shared in this interaction.
Evocation, not education. A therapist should know that motivation for change resides within the client. Autonomy, not authority. A therapist should know that autonomy is key and respect the client's right to make informed choices that facilitate change. They should know that a client is in charge of their choices and thus responsible for outcomes. They should also emphasize the client's control and choice. It is the therapist's responsibility to show empathy for the experience of others, the desire to alleviate the suffering of others, and the belief and commitment to the act of the best interest of the client.
As the therapist, you must remember that being client-centered does not mean that the topic of conversation is random. The topic is determined by the reason the client is there. Being client-centered does mean that the conversational focus is on the client's concerns, fears, and lack of knowledge about how to make change. Motivational interviewing should support the client in articulating what changes they desire. Questions to consider: how personally important this change is as opposed to how important the therapist thinks it is. What stands in the way of making this change, and how can you increase the chances of success? For motivational interviewing, remember the rule. Resist telling them what to do, understand their motivation, listen with empathy, and empower them. What is writing reflex? It is the compulsion to fix things, give answers, and problem solve. Motivation is essential when working with clients. Understanding a client's motivation is very beneficial, especially when there's limited consultation time. When considering motivation, it's more productive asking a client what their reasons are and why they chose to change, rather than telling them why they should. It is so important that the therapist listens to their client. Empowering a client is essential to the recovery process. A person served who is active in the consultation, thinking aloud about the why, what, and how of change is more likely to do something about it when they feel empowered. Desire, ability, language, reasons, and need, combined with commitment, is what causes behavior change. See the value in commitment language. When hearing change talk, a therapist should elaborate, affirm, reflect, and summarize. Rephrase resistance. Open questions when promoting changes often start with problem recognition. You can express your concern, intention to change, optimism, and commitment. Here is a case example. When you get this, try to find some of the positives. It is important to let people talk about their values, such as family, health. It allows people to see possible connections between their values and making a behavior change. Remember in motivational interviewing that it's the client's responsibility for changing their destructive behavior.